Alright, you guys. Welcome back to the shop. I got one that, I don't know, maybe has a whole lot of history with some people. This is a newer model. But yeah, it's an old timer. Pretty nice little knife. I'll open it up for you guys and just set it down here. Let y'all kind of soak it in, looking at it. I'll talk a little bit of maybe some history about this brand, maybe the old timer. This video in particular will be about this one, but I've got a whole lot of feelings about this company. So I'll just go ahead and start this knife right here. It's old timer 0622. I don't know if that's a model number or not. It's got a 32 OT on it. I'm pretty sure that that's a design. The 32 and the OT is 32, and then the old timer, which is kind of what they've always went through with the OT. I'm not sure how all that stuff works. I've done a little bit of research, but not a lot. There's the other side of it. Well, we'll tell you, this is a lockback knife, meaning that once it's open, it locks right here, and you have to push it down before it'll close. Kind of does like a half stop. You open it all the way up. The overall length of this, which is tip to tail, they're saying is 7.65. I'm not sure what that would translate into. Probably something like 7/8, something like that. So the handle length is 4.25, so that's from there to the tail. The blade length, which is the drop point, it's 3.4 inches. I think this is what they call a Scandi grind. So it goes from all the way, it's ground from all the way to the bottom to the top. The weight on this thing comes in at 5 ounces. Of course, it's a stainless steel blade. The bolsters on this thing, because I've had this thing for a couple months now. The bolsters on this are nickel silver. They're pretty nice, but they scar up pretty quick. They don't look like new anymore. Of course, I bought this thing just to, kind of use and trash and see what I thought about it. Has wooden handles. That's kind of like an old timer trait type of deal. It's cheaper. And then the only other thing is this knife is made in China. But I've had my time to use this thing. It's kind of dull right out the box. I hadn't resharpened it or anything. I actually tried to use it to cut some zip ties the other day, and I was like, well, it's probably time to put an edge on this thing, because it ain't going to come with one from the factory. But I think I paid $23 for this thing, $24 for this thing. I mean, it's kind of what you pay for, I guess. Yeah, and the blade on this thing moves probably like 1/4 of an inch back in there. Of course, it folds the locking lever in there too. It kind of makes me wonder what it's touching in there. Kind of everything, I guess. I think that might be why it's so dull. I don't, I don't know. Of course, it's made in China. That is what it is. They got some different style pins in this thing. You got one small pin there and one or two large pins there. They got a second small pin there. Of course, they got the old timer and the date. I'm pretty sure that says 1953 on there. That's whenever they actually started making old timer. Now I will say I have done a little bit of research into this, into the old timer brand. It seems as though it's like a conglomerate that they've made. Now I remember back before they sold the company that you could buy and still get USA made knives from Old Timer. They were made right here in the USA. You didn't have much of a need to go anywhere else. In my area, a lot of times if you ask somebody for a pocket knife, which was, an older person, back whenever I was younger, a lot of them had, what would you say, an old timer or a case knife. Of course, a lot of those older folk now are dead and gone. But the memory still remains that, they give me a USA made old timer, or it wasn't that knife particular, because that's a new style, new knife. They give me a trapper, which is pretty helpful on the farm. Stuff like that. They most of the time had it was a USA made knife. Well, let's see. So that brings me to my next thing. So I had heard from people that Old Timer had sold to Schrade, which would made sense, because they went from being USA made to Chinese made, which was not the case. After I had done a little bit of research, it turns out that Charade was the first old timer company, the ones that made old timer the first time. And that started, the Charade knives have been around, the USA made knives have been around since 1904. Walden, New York. Of course, you can do your own research and stuff on this. If I lose you or, something like that. But then, Usler and Imperial Knife Company, which Imperial had started in 1916 in Providence, Rhode Island. The Usler and Imperial were together. Imperial had bought Usler. Then Charade sold to Imperial 1946. And then they went on to change the name because of all those companies put together. They had changed the name to the Schrade Walden Knife Company. So then they changed the name in 1985 because the people were, kind of still alive and was worried about a major takeover. So they changed the name to Imperial Charade Company. Well, then the 80s, you could still buy old timer, USA made old timer in the 80s and 90s. But all great things come to an end. They closed shop up in 2004, which was a 100-year anniversary. Which was kind of sad because I had actually went out in probably early 2004 to get one of these last USA made old timers in the Trapper line, and they didn't have any. They were all Chinese made, so they disappeared for a minute. But then whenever I tried to get another one, they were made in China. Imagine that. So they sold that to Taylor Brands LLC, which is in Kingsport, Tennessee, in 2004. So that's whenever they made the change. That brand included Old Timer, Uncle Henry, all those kind of lower end knives. Old Timer is one of those knives that, if it would have stayed here in the U.S., would have been a front runner for case knives, because a lot of them old people they like that USA made stuff, and I kind of feel as though this is a brand that it would probably be better if it was USA made. The steel would probably be better. The fit and finish might be better. Which, don't get me wrong, this is a pretty nice knife. But I remember, and I had actually had USA made old timers. They were of a better quality. I feel as though that the steel in them were better. The fit and finish was better. They were just a better knife all around. Yeah, and that goes back to the story that I had before. You know, them old people that I used to work with and work for, farming and stuff. You know, that they either had a case or an old timer. Um, but the some of the history on the Trapper, which was the original old timer that they had produced, um, was actually made back in the 30s as a K-bar. Um, I really don't know how much of that is true because I mean I've done some research on it, and two of the stories match, and then they actually have a name, listed on that as Taylor Brands LLC, and then they sold to Taylor Brands sold and was purchased by Smith and Wesson. So that kind of adds into that same, Smith and Wesson, Old Timer, Uncle Henry, um, all those cheap Chinese knives that we kind of all know today. Um, you know, that's just my opinion and views of it. Um, would I have liked them to stay in the U.S.? Sure. Um, it probably wouldn't. My opinion wouldn't be different. I would put out there that it's a USA knife. It's a good quality. Um, and if you've got an old timer that is USA made, don't carry it every day because there won't be another one of those made. Um, you know, and that's just the way it is. Um, if y'all like this old timer or have one kind of similar, um, drop a comment if you like it. Um, like it. Um, yeah, I guess that's about everything I got to cover on this here old timer. Um, if you hadn't watched any of the other videos, check them out. I'm slowly getting into building my own knives. It's a slow process. It's a very learning process. Um, I try to keep those on the shorter side. That way, they're not an hour long or anything like that. Still trying to figure out some of the editing on that. Appreciate y'all guys. God bless you.